Hi there, welcome back. I'm Jackie, the Everyday Artisan. Today we're going to extend a little bit of the French knots that we learned about in my previous video. If you haven't seen that video yet, be sure to check it out. We were doing French knots to create little tiny treasures, and while I was out blueberry picking the other day, I was kind of inspired by the prettiness of them and decided to make a gift for a family member. I went back inside, scrounged out just 4 or 5 little colors, a little piece of fabric. This was an old vintage hanky that was already half cut up and stained, and decided to repurpose. As I started, I was sitting there and I was sewing away, and my mind started to relax, and I was having some fun flashback memories of some historical drama movies where the women are sitting around in a circle working on embroidery, and all of a sudden I was like, they're sitting there in corsets working on embroidery with nothing much else to do because they were women and they weren't allowed to do much else. And I began thinking how much frustration was channeled into those embroidery pieces. Anyways, let's have some fun. So I was out picking raspberries and blueberries this morning and was super inspired by their simple beauty, and dug up this old linen hanky and decided to, it had already been used for another project, so it was just such pretty fabric. I decided to continue our embroidery lesson and create something to further demonstrate the usefulness of those simple French knots. So I think I'm going to do a little bit of blueberry background or around a letter, maybe a name. And again, as I demonstrated in the first video, you want this to be drum tight. You know, linen has got more give than muslin does, so it might not get as absolutely tight as the muslin does in here, but it will be fine. So there we go. Hey blueberries, what are we gonna make? So I have my fine point Mark Be Gone water soluble ink. Now you could use a pencil, you could use a super fine marker, you could use disappearing ink, although I find I don't embroider fast enough for disappearing ink. It disappears before I'm done. So I'm just going to use this water soluble ink. I got this just at Joann Fabric, a local fabric store in upstate New York. And I'm going to create an L. And I think I'll do some blueberries. And little clusters. The blueberries are so darling. Hanging off. I actually saw a red squirrel picking one off of the leaves the other day. It was really quite lovely. I wish I had had my camera. And we'll just leave it like that. Maybe another one over here. We'll stop there. Got my L all drawn and very pleased with it. And I've got my box of threads. Gonna pick out some blues. The blueberries this morning, I'm gonna turn it this way, were quite bright. So we're gonna go with 3 shades of blue, a medium, a lighter shade, and a real dark, to kind of give us a little bit of variegation in it, and then a contrasting color for the letter. I think I'm gonna go for an L in bright yellow. That's a beautiful yellow and blue, always looks so beautiful together. So now I just need to fetch myself a needle. Be right back. Now, while I used one strand of thread in the teeny tiny mini ones, I'm actually going to use 2 strands of thread, or maybe even 3. This will build up quite quickly. 2 strands will probably be fine. And you can always size up when you're using embroidery. You can even, I've done embroidery with the full 6 strands, always very careful not to knot them, but working with 2 strands is very easy. It's easy to thread, and it's easy to get a nice thin line, and it's also easy to build things up quickly. So I'm going to just pull this apart. If you've never done this before, a can twist, just hold your fingers and slide your finger through and just carefully put it aside. I'm going to thread my needle, put it in, do my tailor's knot on the other end. First thing I ever teach a student is how to do a tailor's knot. It saves so much time. And we're going to do the same thing that we had done on our previous video. Come up, wrap around twice, and slide back in, holding it taut, not too tight because it can get there. And we'll just do those side by side. Do one more, show you, pull out. So if you'll notice, I'm not holding it like a trap, like a tent thing, just nice and softly taut. I go back, hold it firm, slip it through, there we go. So, finished my L, and has this lovely chenille quality to it. I love those old 1950s chenille blankets and stuff. And I'm going to continue with my double French knot to do the blueberries. So I've got blueberries here and some blueberries there, and we're just going to do a few little quick knots, and they're just really circles. Even in perspective, a circle-y thing is still a circle, which is kind of funny. Doesn't matter what perspective you're looking at a sphere, it always ends up looking like a sphere. So I'm going to be doing these mostly dark blue, but I am going to add a couple accent colors on each of them to kind of give it a little bit of a variegated quality. I'm very close to the little leg over here. It's coming up, you can see there, so my needle might bump up against it. So to make this nice and round, I'm doing mostly French knots, but here I'm going to do a single French knot, doubles and singles to make it nice and round. I'm finishing up this last berry with the dark blue, and then I'm going to switch to the accent colors. And one of the accent colors I was just looking at is very, very close. And I'm working today near a nice bright window. And again, when you're trying to carve out a couple minutes, it's nice to get a little bit of sunshine on your skin, even if it's a rainy day. It increases the power factor of sitting down and giving yourself a little downtime. And last one. So we'll round these out with the next colors. So in starting the accent colors, I'm only going to put 1 or 2 little knots in of the accent color into each berry. And depending on how close they are, we might have to cut and move it, because you don't want a bunch of threads wandering around the back side of your embroidery. I always appreciate master embroidery people who can turn over their embroidery and it look as neat from the back as it does from the front. So here's this one, and that's, you know, 1/4 inch or so, and that's a little bit too far. So what I like to do is I turn it over. And then you can see mine's not a master, but I still enjoy it. Don't need a lot of skill, just some techniques. I just pull it through once. Ooh, got caught on my little yellow knot. Tug it down, pick up my little scissors and trim it, leaving about 1/8 of an inch of a tail. And then re-knot and start over at the next berry, turning it back over again, putting our little accent color in. So it might not look very different, but when it's all done, those little nuances in color really do make a difference. And now we'll add 1 more color to it to round it out. So when working with any color kind of combinations, especially when you're working with things from nature, there's always what I like to call a bright spot. The light bounces off of it. So I'm actually just going to put a couple little single or double French knots in each one of them, partly to round them out even more, make them look like berries, and partly to give those little highlights that we see whenever we really kind of squint our eyes and look at nature. There's always a highlight or two on a leaf where the light is shining, reflecting off of the leaf, or especially a sphere. You can always tell a sphere because of its white spot or its bright spot on it. Yeah, I like that. See, what just happened there was I pulled my French knot through the same hole that I had brought the thread up through, and that just pops it right back out again. This berry is a funny shaped berry. There we go. Round it out. And I don't like the way this side looks. And we're going to do a little trick. So see where this is popping up like that? We're going to just do a single knot, pull it over, and tuck it in. Pull it down. And it's a little square on that side, but it will round itself out with a little bit of prodding. And there we go. Our berries are done. Now just to do our leaves. So the blue is fading a bit. It's very humid here today, so it is a water-soluble ink, so it doesn't surprise me that it's fading a bit. I could darken it up if I needed to, but I don't really need to because I can see it. So we're going to use a stitch called the stem stitch, and it's very simple. You want your stems to be nice and straight, a little bit of contrast with the other stuff. So you pull it through, and I'm going to work from right to left because that's the way I work, and I put it in, and then I just bring it back up kind of right next to it. See if we can get a little bit closer, and then we go up a little further, and it's kind of a back stitch. So you go past it, you're going to pop it in and bring it right back out again, right next to where you just are going to have the thread passing it. Pull it out like that so you can see better. And we get a kind of a straight line out of it. And I'm only going to do a little bit of a stem because the leaves will be taking up the rest. And the final one, I just pop in and knot from behind. So there we get kind of a straight line out of that. So our stems are done on both sides, and now I will go on to do the leaves. And that is a fun little stitch that I will show you. Another very simple in and out kind of stitch, not too much to think about. So for the leaves, we're going to do a very simple straight stitch called the fishbone, and you're going to bring it up at the tip. So if you can see, I have a nice big leaf here I'm going to demonstrate this for. Part of it's hidden behind. Actually, I'll do this one. Can you see? Let's see if we can get a little bit closer. Here's my little leaf. We're going to bring it up at the tip of the leaf. And blueberry leaves are kind of squat and round, so we're going to not make a very long design on it, just a short one. We're going to put it down maybe, I don't know, a quarter of the way down, pull it through, and then you're going to bring it up to the right of your original stitch and bring it down right next to where you went through with that first stitch, not in the same hole. And because this is handkerchief linen, the weave is a little bit wide, but I'm gonna bring it down and go back up, following the shape of your outer curve of your leaves, bringing it down just below each time, and continue going to the right and down, to the left and down. Making sure you bring that center down a little further each time. To the right. Bring this right into the yellow. I've got our last little leaf here. As I've been sitting here working on this, the wind is blowing around me. It's been a rainy night, but it's nice just to sit here for a few minutes and listen to the wind blowing. Again, one of those things that you don't realize when you've got so much going on, you know, what is it to feel nature? And even though I'm indoors, I've got the window open. It's a crummy day, but boy, the sound of the wind is quite charming, enchanting. Another benefit from taking a moment, turning off technology, just sitting here, creating something. Who would have thought so many wonderful things could come from working with your hands? And there we go. We'll knot her off. I'm quite pleased with that. I have to decide what I'm going to do with it. If I'm going to put it on something else, make a little wall hanging out of it, surprise my sister-in-law for her birthday as a gift on top, although she sees this video, she'll already know. But anyways, thanks so much for joining me on this. I'll include some pictures of the finished product. Oh, just a little note, because I used water-soluble ink, I will probably rinse this in water and then press it. If you used pencil, hopefully you covered up your pencil marks, but even if you didn't, some of the really old embroideries that I've seen have actually, you've seen this faint whisper of the pencil or fine liner marker behind it, which adds to the charm in a strange way. But for this one, because I can, I will soak it in water, and it was an old linen handkerchief which had a bunch of very permanent wrinkles, probably 40 years worth of wrinkles. So I will make sure I iron it flat. Thanks again for joining me. See you next time.